Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Aquaponics World. Just about to do a filter cleaning. I have noticed some food getting stuck in the intake there, so I'm just going to clean out that intake, scrub down the fish tank, do a little water change out. Might do a quarter water change out, and maybe changing out the water on the plant. As some of you guys know, I've been doing this string thing here. I did plant some seeds for some summer squash. They have not germinated yet, but as soon as they do, I will be posting a video on that. All right. The first thing you want to do when you're cleaning the filters on these Fluval pumps is to drain the water. So we're going to close the in and out valves in sequence. So this is the in. So we're going to close that. This is the out. We're going to close that. And then we're just going to unplug the motor for the pump. Take this utility valve and open up the utility valve. After you've closed the in and out and you have unplugged it, and you've opened up your utility valve, put the utility valve in a bucket, you're gonna press this button right here, detaching the out valve, and that will start to drain out the water. It helps if your pump is above the height of the bucket, and you just drain out all this water. And then you will be detaching these screws so that you can take this lid off and take the filters out, and I will do that right now. All right, once you have emptied the water out of the pump, you can reattach this and close this off, and you just unscrew these screws just enough to where they will pass over like that. And you continue to unscrew all of the screws, popping them over to the side. And then you'll be able to detach the lid to the pump. And again, you want to make sure that your power is off, that you've closed your in and out valves before doing this, and then you're going to be able to take out your filters. Once you've taken all your screws and unscrewed them, you can then take this lid off of here, set it off to the side, and now you have access to these filters. And this is where all your old food goes that when you overfeed your fish, it ends up in here. So I can't stress enough, do not overfeed your fish. A little tiny pinch is plenty. They say to feed your fish the size of their eye. So a little tiny pinch. Usually the eyes aren't that big, so you're just going to take a little tiny pinch and feed them the size of their eye. Otherwise it ends up in this filter, clogging it all up, and it can cause some serious problems. They can get worms that will be parasites. After you have removed the lid off your filter, you're going to take that tote, dump it out, dump the water that you got out of the pump out, throw it out. It's really dirty water, so you're not going to be able to really use it to clean much. Then you are going to take a hose, just a garden hose that you have connected to your sink, and you're gonna fill this bucket up with some water, use some dechlorinator, let it sit for about 5 minutes, and then you'll be able to rinse your filters out inside this bucket. And I will go ahead and fill that up and show that to you in the next video. Once you've attached your garden hose to your sink, you're going to want to first turn on the hot water, let the hot water run for a minute, hook up the hose, and then turn the hot water all the way on, cold water all the way on, so that it gives it a nice 50-50 split of water, so that your water is a nice room temperature. You know, a little tiny bit cooler than room temperature is fine, but you don't want it freezing cold in there, and you definitely don't want it boiling hot, obviously. And you're just going to put enough water in this tote so that you can rinse those off. And don't forget to put your dechlorinator in there before you rinse it off. Again, this is a tutorial on how to clean the filter of a fish tank. So this applies to any type of fish tank, any type of filter. About once a month you want to make sure that you clean these filters off. Get rid of all that old food that's stuck in there and stuff like that. And you know, maybe every 6 months or so, just go ahead and throw it out and get a new one. But it does create beneficial bacteria in there, so you don't want to just throw it out every day or throw it out every week or whatever. You can always rinse them off and then reuse them. But when you use your tap water, make sure it's a nice warm water, like 70, 72 degrees, 75 room temperature. And make sure you add some dechlorinator, water conditioner, to your water before you add it, before you clean it. Now this water conditioner says 2.5 milliliters for 5 gallons of water. So it's a really small amount of dechlorinator that you add in there. Just a little tiny bit. Maybe mix that up a little bit, and it says to wait 5 minutes for this product, but just read your instructions on your conditioner. I'm not advertising conditioners yet, so you know, get whatever water conditioner works for you at the fish store or at the pet store, wherever you go, and just make sure that you get rid of that chlorine that's in the water before you rinse off your filters. So you just wait about 5 minutes, and then you'll be able to stick those in there and rinse them out. Once you've waited the 5 minutes for your water to dechlorinate, oh, look at this, these roots aren't in here where they're supposed to be again. But anyways, I'll figure out something to fix that at some point. But what I wanted to say is, now this is for the Fluval pump. You just pull up on this so that it can, you can detach it. And then you can just take this off. It's stuck on there with like some suction cups, but you can just take this whole piece out like this so that your intake isn't all plugged up. And you can go ahead and put this in this dechlorinated water right here and just rinse that out. You want to make sure that you rinse that out at least once a month, if not more. Once you've cleaned your intake filter in the dechlorinated water, if you had a lot of food sitting inside your intake, and as you can see, I definitely am still feeding these fish way too much, but anyways, once you've cleaned it, you're probably going to have a bunch of dirty water. It's probably best just to go ahead and dump that out, get a new tote of water. And I know it's quite a hassle to just keep filling up totes of water, adding the dechlorinator, waiting the 5 minutes, but every process that you take to minimize the funk in your filter, the better. So just, you know, take it one step at a time, keep filling up totes of water with dechlorinator in it, and just rinse out each section of your intake and your filtering system at least once a month. When you're cleaning out your intake, this is a good opportunity to clean off your plant. If you have the same setup as I do, where the plant is behind the intake pipe here, And this works pretty well because I have the bubbler underneath the roots, and it kind of keeps the plant in place. And then just use a net, because when you take that intake off, you might end up with some excess food. Just take your net and scoop out all that food that you can. And you can use your bucket of dechlorinated water to rinse out your net. Like I said, once you've cleaned your intake, dump that water out. You know, get rid of all that old food that was in your intake before you start cleaning out the filter. Just put a little bit more water in your tote, add your dechlorinator, wait 5 minutes, and then start going at the filters. Because you want to use clean water to clean your stuff. And of course dechlorinated water as well, so make sure you add your water conditioner to this water. Add your water conditioner. Make sure you follow the instructions on how much water conditioner to use. Make sure it has some property that gets rid of the chlorine in there. Read the instructions on there. Make sure that it actually gets rid of chlorine. So neutralizes chlorine, chloramines, and heavy metals. Make sure it says something like that on there. Not necessary to add the bacteria, but definitely want to make sure you get rid of the chlorine out of your tap water. The disgustingness of the filter. Absolutely gross. This is the fun part, and this is why you want to do this at least once a month. And I think it's like in the instructions, I'll have to read them again, but it does discuss like getting new ones and how often to get them. So, you know, just follow your maintenance. At one point I had to take the impeller apart. I think that was like 6 months in. I had to take the impeller apart and check it and clean it, check the O-rings and stuff like that. But when you're cleaning these, make sure you're using dechlorinated water. And as nasty as this thing is, I'm gonna go ahead and dump this water out and get a new bucket of water to clean the rest of the filters. There's tons of filters in this. So I would suggest getting one of these because they're really great. They have tons of filtration. So that is definitely not 100% perfect. That's about as good as I can do. And I'm gonna have to check my instructions. I think it's about time for me to swap out all my filters. I already replaced my charcoal filter in there, but I believe it's every, I'm gonna say 6 months, 9 months, something like that. You got to replace all the filters in there, these filters, and I think even the biomedia, but I'll check that out. But you know, this applies to all filters for fish tank pumps. You want to make sure at least once a month you're cleaning these out in some dechlorinated water, and once every few months that you're replacing them. We're going to dump that old water out and fill this back up with some more dechlorinated water so that you can start taking these out, cleaning these, get down to the next layer, clean those. And you just got to keep dumping out this bucket of water and re-adding new water. Make sure you add the dechlorinator, and that way you can get these good and clean. Just gonna fill this up with some dechlorinated water so we can clean these other filters out. I'm gonna add my water conditioner, mix it up, and wait 5 minutes. A lot of people think that you need to have rocks or soil in your hydroponic system, which completely defeats the purpose in my mind. I have not needed any rocks or soil. My one issue that I have had in the past is trying to keep the plant outside of the water, the roots inside the water. And you notice I have a bubbler. Some people go with the Kratky system. It does work. You can do it without bubblers. You just let your water level drop naturally as the plant consumes it and it evaporates, and eventually the plant does sprout some air roots and it doesn't require air. But I do add the bubblers, and that just helps it to get air. So the main thing about this system is that I have added a string to hold it up. One thing that's cool about having this string that holds it up, especially if you have it on a reel or just tape it, whatever you got to do, is that you can adjust the string so you can pull it up. You can take the tape off or reel it in a little bit and pull it up just a little bit when it grows, and that helps to keep it at a level where the plant is outside the water. So just now I noticed that the plant was kind of leaning into the water. I don't know whether it was because it grew or what. I mean, the string hasn't changed in length, the bucket hasn't moved, and it was just fine. The water level hasn't really changed much, but since the water was up to almost here, I went ahead and pulled the string up a little bit, adjusted it so that the water level's down here above the roots and below the plant. With both the Kratky and the deep water culture systems, again, for one thing, they use soil in a soilless system, whether it be those clay pellets or whatever, peat rock, whatever they're using, foam pads. I've seen everything to pool noodles to keep the plant in some type of soil. But it's not necessary. You do not need to have any type of soil. The other thing that both of those systems use is a net cup or something to bind these roots up. Again, you don't want to bind your roots up. You don't want to set it into a cup that keeps it enclosed. It's better to let your roots just grow out naturally. So no cup is way better. This system is all original. And just like overfeeding your fish or not cleaning your filters, not cleaning your fish tank, not doing water change outs, dechlorinating the water is of the utmost importance. Went through a lot of trial and error before I realized that you do need to dechlorinate your water. And at some point when I start growing fruits and vegetables out of this system, obviously I will use a natural process of dechlorinating the water. There is a natural system of dechlorinating the water, which is basically you just leave your tap water sitting out in the sun for like a day, which can be tough. You got to judge when it's going to rain. Maybe you need a cover for it. But yeah, that's what I'll do when I start doing fruits and vegetables. So when you're doing aquaponics, the difference between aquaponics and hydroponics is your fish, right? So that doesn't mean necessarily that you're not using any fertilizers. I am using a fertilizer. It's an aquaponics fertilizer that I put straight into the fish tank, and it feeds this plant and it feeds this plant. Now, if you were to want to have a dirty aquaponics system, you could just use your filter, wring it out in your water, and you would get plenty of NPK, plenty of all of the nutrients that you want just from your fish tank. But I like to have a clean water system, so I just use the fertilizer, and it's perfectly good for the fish. One thing that I've seen in most of the aquaponics systems that I've looked at online is that they like to keep their deep water culture in a dark environment. They'll even put their fish inside a darkened environment. And when they show you the water, it looks disgusting to me. I mean, I just don't see any reason why you would want disgusting fish water and disgusting plant water. I say keep your water clean on both your fish and your plant. And that way you can see what's going on in there. You know, if you can see the root growth, you can see the fish growth. And at some point here, I'm going to be switching over to tilapias and fruits and vegetables. But this is all just trial and error. The first thing I started with was hydroponics. Hydroponics is really easy. Like I said, there's a crack key system. If you're not familiar with the crack key system, you should definitely check it out if you're starting doing hydroponics. All you have to do is just take a net cup and you put your seedling in there. First you get some rock wool. You put your seed in the rock wool, you water it, you let it germinate, you get your little seedling and you put it into a net cup, put some little clay balls in there, put that net cup into a jar of water, and it just naturally drains the water down, which makes for air roots. So you don't need any bubblers, you don't need to do anything. You don't need to add water for months. It just sits there and grows, and it's amazing. You should watch the videos on those. Those are really cool ideas. The cracky system is really cool. You can take hydroponics to the next level by adding a bubbler. I definitely suggest adding a bubbler. The cracky system's great. It does grow air roots, you know, and you do have to add some water every now and then to make sure that your water level is covering up your water roots, but not covering up your air roots. But in this system, you know, you don't have to worry about air roots. All you got to worry about is that you have a bubbler. So your roots can be covered with water at all times, your plant outside the water, and the plant's going to be constantly getting air. And I grew a tomato plant that got huge. I mean, just enormous. If you check out some of my other earlier Instagram videos on Tim Garrow, TimGarrow on Instagram, you'll see I grew some huge tomatoes just like this. If some of you are thinking about maybe a good idea for little kids is to have a fish tank, I'm going to go ahead and suggest that unless you're trying to teach your kids about death, you know, and I get that, don't get me wrong, you want to get your kid a pet that it's not too attached to, maybe a little hamster, whatever, a fish, you want to teach it about how death works, go ahead. But this is not a task that a child should be performing. The first thing that I learned about fish tanks is that it's definitely not a little job, and I had given my son some allowance to clean the fish tank and it got nasty. So you know, I tried to keep up with it and, you know, maintain it with him, but it's definitely an adult job. There's a lot to this. It takes tons of time. Once you put some dechlorinated water into a bucket, you can take these filters out and just scrub them off. Make sure that there's no old food on there, stuff like that. Rinse them off in that dechlorinated water. And with the Fluval pump, you get tons of filtration. You get you know, you get all kinds of stuff in here. A charcoal filter, you get biomedia, which the biomedia is just these things, and they just help have a landing pad for the biological filtration system, which is like the bacteria that grows inside of there. So those are good bacteria that are in there. I say it all the time about fish tanks: go big or go home. That's a huge deal with these, because these giant filters, these giant pumps and all this stuff, it just makes it so much easier to maintain a clean fish tank. and a big fish tank, you know, a 50-gallon minimum size fish tank is the way to go. If you're getting a 2-gallon, 5-gallon tank, you're just wasting your time. Goldfish, you know, I can put 3 goldfish in this 50-gallon tank and they'll be good. They get to be like, I think 6 inches, you know, almost a foot. So they get pretty big. When your water gets all nasty like this, you've cleaned out a couple of filters, just dump this water out, throw it out. If you want a dirty aquaponics system, by all means, this stuff has some seriously good nutrients in it. It has all the NPK, which I found surprising. It doesn't just have ammonia, which you can use for nitrogen. It also has phosphorus and potassium, and that's what the NPK on your bag of fertilizer that you buy at the store stands for. So this has everything that you want to get in the bagged fertilizer, or in aquaponics, the liquid bottled fertilizer. So you can use this nasty stuff if you don't want to buy fertilizer, or you can't purchase the fertilizer, you want to live off the grid. This is the stuff right here. This is the goop that'll grow plants. With the Fluval pumps, comes with a bunch of filters in there. So just take your time and get new buckets of water, get fresh buckets of water with a dechlorinator to clean each step of the process, cleaning each filter as you go. If you have a little small filter, you know, all you need is just a bucket of water, dechlorinated water, to rinse it out real easy. In another video, I discussed wanting to purchase a second one of these pumps, and I'll probably purchase a second one of these 50-gallon fish tanks for the plants. And what I'll be doing is taking the pump and pumping it from the fish tank to the plant and back and forth. So stay tuned for that stuff. I will be working on that. I had mentioned that Instagram kind of shorted me on some of the income that I thought I was going to get. It said I was going to get $100. I only got $60, and it came like a week late. Not complaining. I appreciate the money, but just found out I'm getting my tax return, which is cool because I do DoorDash. Wasn't sure if I was going to get a tax return, but hey, I got a kid, and thank goodness for that. Loving that kid right now. So when I get my tax return, getting another one of these, another fish tank. So we're looking at another month, and I'll be posting that. Now we've gotten this filter cleaned off, these 2 filters somewhat cleaned off here. And inside here is a basket that held that black foam pad. And I'm just gonna rinse that off in here. And these get kind of slimy, so I just like to run my finger across it like I'm washing dishes, or rinsing dishes, because it's you know, it's sitting there with that foam pad, so it gets kind of nasty. But no sense dumping out this water, it's still pretty good. Inside here you got 2 red handles, and those 2 red handles you lift up and you can take out the whole stack. Just like that, you take your filters out, the whole stack, and you can pop these handles down. These handles help hold it all together, so then you can take it apart a little bit more. And this is where your bio media is at. And I like to just take my finger and scrub each one of these little columns here. It takes a little while, but they get a little bit slimy in there, and food gets stuck in there, and you can't just dip it in the water and be done with it. But as you see, I got a second set of filters in there, a second set of bio media. There's also a charcoal filter in there, and then I'm gonna have to rinse out the actual container itself. So none of this stuff is gonna come out exactly perfectly clean, but it's good to get as much as you can off, and you can just kind of dip it in this water, pull it out after you scrub it, and just make sure that the big chunks are taken out. Set that over here with your filters, and then go on to your next one. And like, if you don't have really dirty water, you can go ahead and start cleaning off some more stuff in it. you know, it's just if it gets really bad, you definitely don't want to be trying to clean stuff with dirty water, obviously. And so I will probably dump this after this one, scrub this other filter, scrub this other container, the charcoal filter, and clean this other container here. Once you dump that water out, it's time to grab another bucket of water so that you can continue cleaning these. And I left these handles in here so I'll be able to pull this other one out. I've seen a lot of different aquaponics systems out there, and there's different pumps and stuff like that. But if you ask me, I would suggest starting with the fish tank. Get your fish going pretty well. Maybe start with some goldfish because they're pretty easy. And adding hydroponics to it is no problem. Don't forget to add your water conditioner every step of the way as you're cleaning this. A lot of people are thinking with this aquaponics system that you have there, can I grow anything? And the answer is so far, yeah. I grew a giant tomato plant in here. I have seen videos on people growing deep water culture, potatoes, you know, just name it. You know, you can Google it. Everything can grow with like this. This deep water culture system of having a bubbler is really great. Hanging it from a string, super awesome technique for getting it to grow straight up right. Prune the sides off, you know, just let it grow straight up and down, and you should have a real good product at the end, no matter what you want to grow. Now we've done this first layer of filterization, got the water all dechlorinated. Just gonna lift these out. Lift this up out of this water here. Sorry. Pull this handle down. It's a two-handed job here. And I guess I will just set this down here right now. And I will take this out, set this here. And here's the carbon filter. So that's what actually filters out the water. The rest of the stuff is more for storing bacteria. So this is very important. You want to change these out pretty often. You know, just read the instructions on the Fluval. It'll tell you how often to change out your filters. And the cool thing is you can order all this stuff online, so there's no problem getting new filters and stuff like that. Just clean these out the same way as the other one. Just kind of rinse them off like you're rinsing dishes off. And once in a while you do have to replace these, but you definitely don't want to replace them too often or even clean them too often. You want to leave them for at least a week so that they can build up some beneficial bacteria. And then we got this thing here. And again, I'm just going to scrub each one of these little panels here and make sure this is as clean as I can get it. And then I'll be dumping that out. You get this all cleaned out, and you can put this back in there. Well, it goes charcoal filter. You gotta remember how to put this stuff all back together. This goes on the bottom. And this is some pretty funky water, so I'm gonna dump this out. I'm also gonna dump this out and get some more clean dechlorinated water and rinse this out, and then just put it all back together. Once you dump your dirty water out and you empty this, you dump this out. You just gotta fill this back up with some clean water, get some dechlorinator in there so that you can dump it in here and scrub all this out and get it all nice and clean. And dump that back out, and then start putting stuff back together. Something that's really cool about aquaponics is that excuse me, you can truly call it an organic plant, right? So if you don't use any chemicals whatsoever, now you're in an organic field. So the best part about growing indoors is you don't have any pesticides, no herbicides, and if you're using dirty fish water to feed your plant, well, that's definitely organic. So you can actually feed your plant with just dirty fish water. One thing that I do want to do on this channel is not just show every single step along the way, which I do that, but I also want to show the progress over time so that you can see that even though I'm just learning what I'm doing, as I think we all are learning what we're doing when it comes to aquaponics and hydroponics, fish tanks, you know, it's a learning process, and there's a lot of sources out there to learn from, but the way you know if you do it right is to follow up with it, follow through and see, you know, and I'll be posting these for time to come and you'll see the results. Make sure every time you do a water change out, anytime you clean your filters, anytime you do anything that's going to be including new tap water, that you either let that tap water sit out, if you're doing organic, you either let that tap water sit out for 24 hours in the sun and test its chlorine level, or add some water conditioner. And this stuff is pretty cheap, it's a couple of bucks. It only takes 2.5 milliliters for 5 gallons of water. So well worth it. It will kill your fish if they get chlorine in them. Some people say, oh, I have no problem adding tap water to mine. Well, that's cool. I had a few die, so I just try to keep it on the safe side. Okay, now we're just gonna clean this out. Got a 5-gallon tote of water here with some dechlorinator that's been sitting here for 5 minutes. And I am just going to use this empty gallon jug to kind of clean off this mess that's inside the tank. And this is the Fluval pump / filter. I've already rinsed off all the filters and the media. So I'm just going to scrub all the sides off like this, like I'm rinsing dishes. And I'm going to dump that out and add some more and do it again. Got it a little bit cleaned out here. Just going to add some more. Make sure I scrub this canister real well. This one's cleaning all the filters and the fish tank and all that stuff, and you don't even clean the canister, right? So just getting all the food particles and the sliminess off of here. And once I got it a little bit cleaner, then I can go ahead and put the filters back in and put some water back in and close it up and get it going again. Once you get all your filters cleaned off, your canister cleaned out, you can actually use some of this dechlorinated water to fill it back up. But you want to make sure that you put everything back the way that it was when it was in there. And you can use the red handles. They give you some red handles, and you just put them inside of here to hold the whole thing together while you're putting it back together. So each side has its own handle, and you just attach the handle inside there like that, and that helps drop it down into the canister. So you put the handles on there, and then the next thing that goes in is these pads. Your Fluval pump will come with instructions explaining all this stuff, but because I am so happy with the Fluval pump filter product, I just want to help out some of their customers. I'm definitely not getting paid for advertisement. Fluval, if you're out there listening, I am helping to sell your product. You give me a little kickback on that, that'd be awesome. But yeah, so the filter goes in there like that. Underneath this you have your charcoal filter. Next one goes on top, and these handles go inside of it. Once you have the two stacks stacked up with the handles in there, next thing to go in is going to be the other sponge filters. So you got a total of 4 sponge filters, and these 4 sponge filters, I'm trying to not knock this over into the water. Well, these go inside here, just like the first one. And then you have this cup that goes in here. And last but not least is this. And then you just put all of this back into your canister. Put some water in there. So once you get your filters back in there, for the FX4, it is 1.5 gallons. So since this is a gallon jug, we're going to put 1.5 of these in here. For the FX6, it is 2 gallons. But you want to make sure that you put this water in here before you close it all up, because that's going to help to prime the system. Once it's primed, it's going to be completely full of water at all times, and it's just going to be circulating, and it's going to keep air from getting in there. Mainly you just want to make sure that you have plenty of water in here when you put the lid back on. And the lid has a stem that goes down inside one side, so you want to make sure that you got it set up on the right side. Like that, so that the this comes up, and this one has a little hole for this to go into. Like that. And then you just put your screws back in. Tighten those bad boys down, and then you can reconnect this, turn the valves on, stuff, plug it in. But go ahead and get to that. Once this system's been running for about 5 minutes, it will do a little bubbly action where it's just blowing out the last little bit of air in the lines, and then it's going to start sucking the water in through the intake and putting it out the outtake, and it's going to filter all the water in the fish tank, and it's going to continue to do that, and it's going to cycle like that constantly. It takes a few breaks every now and then to release the air, but for the most part it just stays constantly cycling the water.